And welcome back to The Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Arcega in Washington. Well, more on the 2016 race, U.S. campaign rhetoric on international trade and threats to withdraw military support to our allies have suddenly become real issues in this election cycle. But some international observers say those concerns are probably overblown. Some foreign policy experts insist American interests abroad remain constant and complicated, regardless of who sits in the White House. More now from VOA's Brian Padden, who files this report from Seoul, South Korea.
Both Republican Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton have been critical of free trade policies, especially the yet-to-be-ratified Trans-Pacific Partnership. Clinton initially supported the Asian free trade deal to counter China's growing economic power, but changed her position during the campaign. Trump has threatened to retaliate by imposing punitive tariffs on Chinese goods. Economists have cautioned that such a move could spark a trade war that would hurt both economies. On deterring the North Korean nuclear threat, Clinton supports maintaining strong military alliances in the region and cooperating with China to increase economic sanctions. Trump has said he would demand that China force its economically dependent ally to halt its nuclear program. He has also said he wants South Korea and Japan to pay more for American troops in their country, or he may bring them home and allow the allies to develop their own nuclear weapons.
So, does it matter to our allies who sits in the White House? Joining us now for the international perspective, I'm joined in Washington by VOA Indonesian Service correspondent Nova Poerwadi, along with VOA Middle East specialist Masood Farivar. Thank you both for joining us. Nova, I'm going to talk to you because I've been seeing all your Facebook posts. You were at all the conventions here. You know, there's a great deal of interest around the world for this election. A friend of mine called me from Canada and said, you know, I can't stop watching. It's like watching a slow motion accident. Do your viewers in Indonesia, in Jakarta, do they care about the U.S. election?
Well, what's interesting is on the morning of November 7th, 2012, I said to my colleagues, there's not going to be much interest for the next election. Boy, was I wrong.
Were you ever wrong?
Of course, much of the focus internationally, especially to foreign audiences in Asia, is Donald Trump, because Hillary Clinton, the first female candidate from a major party, big deal according to Asian viewers, because they've had female presidents, they've had female prime ministers. And so Donald Trump, the person who, as we all know, may put America's foreign policy in Asia in a whole different paradigm, and also in terms of Indonesia and some other parts of Asia, the Muslim travel ban, because Indonesia is a predominantly Muslim country. And so these things get a lot of their attention, and we've been seeing so much interest, especially once the nomination process was done.
So they care about what goes on. Now, Masood, clearly whoever wins the White House is going to become a very important cog in a very larger piece of machinery that involves the entire world. Does it matter, for example, in the Middle East, who gets to sit in the White House?
I think it does. We have never had two more different candidates with two very different visions of the world and the Middle East. There are some differences on strategy and tactics between the two candidates. For example, the question of whether the U.S. should put additional boots on the ground, which Clinton opposes and Trump supports, on the question of whether we should treat Russia and the Syrian government as allies as opposed to adversaries. But on a deeper philosophical level, the experts I've talked to say that there's very little significant difference between the two. Neither candidate has really advocated a grand vision
so they have similar visions in how they plan to deal with Islamic State, for example, correct? They have similar visions and approaches towards dealing with Islamic State, correct?
They have very similar approaches and policy prescriptions for dealing with Islamic State, but neither of them has really advocated a grand vision for the region.
But Nova, let me ask you that same question, since the largest population of Muslims happens to be in Indonesia. Does experience matter on the world stage when it comes to dealing with sensitive issues like religion and ways of life? Does that matter?
I mean, a lot of the news surrounding Donald Trump has been on his supposed Muslim ban, which would impact people in Indonesia. And so that's been one issue that's taken the attention of Asian viewerships. They certainly care who's going to be taking care of all of this, even though there is an underlying anti-American streak maybe, in the Middle East as well, and also in Asia, in countries like Indonesia. And they may see, not much difference between a Clinton presidency and a Trump presidency in terms of dealing with threats like the Islamic State, which also extends to countries like Indonesia,
right,
with many sympathizers there. So there's certainly a sense that the policies and the experience of a candidate would impact countries like Indonesia.
Masood, quickly running out of time, way too quickly. How does this election impact the Muslim American population? How have they responded to the candidacy of a Donald Trump?
Well, the community has been very, very energized. They haven't historically voted as a single voting bloc, but the activists I talked to say that they have not seen this level.
Are they going to vote as a single
The
voting bloc?
expectation is that they will.
Really?
About over 1 million have registered to vote next week, and most of them are concentrated in battleground states where they say they can make a difference.
And I wish I could talk to you guys for another 30 minutes on this, but we're out of time. It's been a fascinating discussion. My thanks to Masood Farivar and Nova Poerwadi, all of our guests today as well. We will know soon enough who the next U.S. president will be, certainly by this time next week. I hope you'll join us then for another edition of The Correspondents. Now, in the meantime, follow our comprehensive election coverage and the latest news from around the world at voanews.com. You can also watch this and other programs. Just click on the Watch tab on the upper right corner of our webpage. We're also on Facebook and YouTube at VOA The Correspondents. I'm Arcega for now. So long from Washington. Thank you, guys.